Good morning, how we doing today? This is James Sweeney, aka SplitSuit. Welcome back to another video, and this is going to be part 4 of 10 of the Preflop strategy and range quiz, and as usual we're going to go through, do some hand reading, talk about line creation, and of course help you play better Preflop. If you've already taken the quiz, continue on. If you haven't, maybe pause here, find the link down in the description box, take it, and then jump back in when you're finished with that. So without further ado, let's talk about today's hand. This is questions 8 and 9. Alright, in this spot we are playing live 2-5, a total unknown open limps under the gun, and it folds to MP2, who's a boring tag who limps behind. So what range in percentage form do you think the tag is limping behind with from the hijack? So think about that for a moment, and then we're going to graph all of the responses in a single graph, and here's what we're looking at. So from a range of 0% of hands up to an 100% range of hands, here's where we are, and we notice that the median answer is 17% of hands, and the average answer is 20.8% of hands. And we notice that there's some pretty tight bunching down here in kind of the 20% range, which means there's probably a fair chunk of agreement among you guys, and to be honest, I think this is probably in the ballpark of what's correct. So if we were to open up Flopzilla and just drag a wide 20% range of hands, here's what we see. But this isn't the way that we would actually build this, right? Because we would think that in this situation, if we think about aces, kings, queens, ace, king, things like that, the boring tag is probably pretty likely to raise those. So they're not going to be in their limp behind range, they're most likely going to be in their raising range, which means that when we're building their limp behind range, we probably have to get rid of hands like these and fill it back up with other hands, maybe like suited connectors, ace-x suited, all of those kind of hands. So keeping that in mind, let's build what we think a roughly 20% range of hands looks like. Now I'm going to clear this out real quick and then start rebuilding from here. So this is a 22% calling range, and I think a calling range is going to be pretty similar to this, right? A limp behind range, because it's going to get rid of the bigger, stronger hands that almost certainly isolate and just leave kind of the weaker, more marginal hands that people want to play but don't necessarily want to raise. So for a boring tag, I still think a boring tag is going to raise king queen here. I still think they're going to raise with 10s, 9s, probably pocket 8s here, and they're probably going to raise with ace jack suited and probably limp behind with some of the more marginal broadways, some of these smaller pocket pairs, suited connectors, suited gappers, ace-x suited, that kind of stuff. And we notice that brings us down to a 19% range of hands. And I think this is probably pretty darn close. If you wanted to actually fill this up to like 20 exactly, throw in that and maybe that, and yeah, you're pretty much right there at 20. And I think this is pretty darn realistic. Normally here I would build what I think y'all would say and then what I would say, and honestly, I think we're pretty much in agreement if you're thinking this is what the range looks like for a boring tag. Now I will make one side note that I think is important to mention, and that is that if the boring tag is paying attention and they're thinking about who's behind them, they have a super spewy player, they have us, and that could mean a bunch of different things, depends on who you are and what your playstyle is. And then they also have a super aggressive player in the big blind. So it is possible that the boring tag does actually have some of the stronger hands in their limping range here, trying to induce a situation where they limp, one of the three people I just mentioned attacks them, and then under the gun continues, and the boring tag can really start pumping the pot from there. So it is possible that the boring tag could have some big hands in there if they're very, very aware of the table dynamics, or if that table dynamic happens to be present when you're playing. So keep that kind of stuff in mind. That can be one of the big differentiators between whether I include a strong hand in their limp behind range, or if it looks something a little closer to this where it's more marginal stuff, set money stuff, suited stuff that wants to see flops for cheaper, that kind of stuff. But as a pure default, I think this is a pretty decent range of hands to assign in this situation, but for the quiz itself, we're not done yet. So if we were to look down at pocket eights, the cutoff folds, what are you doing in this exact situation? Think about it for a moment. And what everyone said they would do here is this. About 78% of people said they would raise, about 22% of people said they would limp behind, and 18 goofballs said that they would fold. So folding is clearly not an option here. It's between limping behind and raising. And I'm definitely with the agreement here. The large percentage of people said they would raise, and I would raise here as well. I don't even really think it's that close. I know a lot of people will consider limping behind because it's cheaper, because it's easier, and a lot of people are just kind of fearful to put in raises preflop, especially bigger raises. But by the same token, when you raise, you could pick up both the limps uncontested, you could put yourself in the driver's seat, you could lose one of the limpers if you raise and just get a single caller. A lot of good things can happen by raising. Whereas if you limp behind, sure, you get in for cheap, but is it really going to be that easy to get paid off when you catch a set? Is it really going to be that profitable? Is it going to be as profitable as raising? So if there was like multiple fish behind and it made more sense to limp and try to get the fish involved too, okay, we could have a different conversation. But even still, as a pure default, I don't even think it's close. This is a very simple spot to raise. Probably going to raise at something like 35, 40 bucks, go forward from there. And again, if I pick up 3.5 big blinds uncontested, great. If I get a heads up situation where I'm in the driver's seat, great. And again, pretty much everything is a really good situation for me. Limping behind because it's cheaper, because it's easier I get it, easier, but I don't think it's going to be more profitable, and I certainly don't think it's going to maximize your expectation. So raise and feel comfortable going from there. Now, if you are one of the people that said that you would limp behind here, again, you're clearly not alone. There's over 500 people that agreed with you here. But a lot of people will limp behind because they're fearful of post-flop, right? They're fearful of tough post-flop situations. But really that stems from a lack of hand reading skills, a lack of confidence of figuring out where a hand like pocket eights is going to fit in your post-flop range. And because of that, people just avoid the pre-flop situation. And I don't want you to do that. I want you to feel comfortable pre-flop and post-flop. And a lot of that is going to stem from good solid hand reading. So if you're newer to this or you're working on this skill set and you know that this is important for your win rate, I would suggest checking out the live hand reading workbook. It's going to work you through situations like this and tons of other ones in single raise pots, 3-bet pots, isolation pots, etc. I would definitely suggest checking it out if you're working on this skill set and you see the importance of it. And if you thought about limping behind because you weren't comfortable post flop, please do this workbook, and trust me, you're going to feel way more comfortable in the future, which is very important and is only going to pad your win rate at the end of the day. And that is going to wrap it up for this video. Thank you so much for hanging out today. If you have any comments or questions, please don't hesitate to let me know. And if you wouldn't mind liking the video and subscribing if you haven't already, I'd really appreciate that as well. So I look forward to seeing you back shortly with parts 5, 6, 7, 8, etc. And if you need anything at all, just let me know. Otherwise, as always, good luck out there and happy grinding.